There are no fewer than 7 legal documents currently filed away at your county office that have the power to halt, reduce, or permanently lock the property tax bill you hand over year after year. 7 documents. Before I move one sentence further, I need to address the largest misconception surrounding this subject, because it's precisely why most seniors who legally qualify never submit even one of them. Folks figure a video like this only applies to one type of homeowner. Either they imagine it's strictly for low-income retirees who are struggling, so if your house is paid off and life is comfortable, you check out. Or they figure it's strictly for wealthy folks with sprawling estates and accountants on retainer. So if you're surviving mostly on Social Security and a modest pension, you check out as well. Both camps are mistaken, and frankly, the issue runs even deeper than that. Some of you are saying to yourself, my house is paid off, so the tax doesn't really sting. It does. It's the largest recurring expense you'll ever shoulder on a home you already hold free and clear. The county couldn't care less that your mortgage is finished. They mail the bill anyway, year after year, for however long you remain there. Some of you are renting today and figure none of this applies to you. It does, because your landlord is footing that property tax bill, and your landlord is funneling it right down to you bit by bit through your rent. When that bill falls for the owner, your rent quits going up the way it has been. So this applies to every one of you, whether your house is valued at $85,000 in a small town in Ohio, $260,000 in a mid-sized city in Arizona, or $520,000 in a county in California that was recently reassessed. There's genuine cash on this list with your name already written on it. And I'm going to spell out on every single document precisely which group benefits the most, so that nobody who watches this through to the finish says, well, that one didn't apply to me. Because the plain truth is, homeowners across every income bracket are silently overpaying simply in distinct ways for distinct reasons on distinct lines of the bill. Here's the brutally simple explanation almost nobody discusses regarding these documents. Your county tax assessor's office is funded directly through the taxes that office gathers. Every single dollar of exemption they greenlight is a dollar their own budget won't see the following year. So consider what that really signifies. The county holds zero financial motive to inform you about a document that reduces what you owe them. They won't ring you. They won't ship you the senior exemption paperwork on your 65th birthday. Your mortgage lender won't highlight it on your statement. The title company that handled your purchase never raised it. And the realtor who unloaded the house on you, the one who pocketed a commission off the sale, absolutely never raised it either. And here's the figure that should drive this home. The typical property tax bill nationwide sits roughly around $4,800 to $5,000 yearly, varying by where you reside. In certain counties across New Jersey and Illinois, it tops $8,000 easily. For a homeowner who's 65 today and remains another 20 years in that house, that adds up to somewhere between $96,000 and $160,000 walking out the door across the remainder of your life on a bill that, for a sizable portion of you watching, ought legally to be slashed in half or, in certain situations, dropped to zero. I'm Garrett, and what I do on this channel is grab the sections of the tax code and the benefit system that are crafted in language designed to be glossed over and convert them into something you can genuinely act on this week. Property tax exemptions might be the cleanest illustration I've ever encountered of a benefit that already exists, that the law already guarantees you, and that merely sits idle unclaimed because the system was never designed to publicize it. So, here's the roadmap for the next 18 minutes. I'll guide you through 7 documents, one at a time, in plain English. 5 that virtually every state provides in some form, and two that almost nobody has ever come across, that I went hunting for specifically because I noticed every other video on this subject leaves them out. And then, toward the close, I'm giving you two items that, as far as I can determine, exist in no other video addressing this. A genuine month-by-month schedule of when to submit each one, and exactly what steps to take the moment the county rejects your application. Because a rejection isn't the end of the story, though most folks treat it that way. Here's the single principle that binds this whole video together, so grip it tightly. Being legally exempt from a tax bill and actually skipping payment on that bill are two entirely separate matters. The law won't refund you on its own. Nobody at the county ships you a check out of generosity. You have to be aware the document exists, and you have to be the one who shows up and submits it. That's the whole reason this video exists. Let's start fixing it right now. Document number 1 is the Homestead Exemption, and I need you to truly sit with this one because it's the document most homeowners are absolutely certain they already have submitted, and a massive chunk of them don't. Almost every state nationwide provides some flavor of it on your primary residence. What it does is strip a portion of your home's assessed value off the table before the county even crunches the math on your bill. In Florida, that portion is $50,000. In Texas, it's $100,000 trimmed from the school portion of your bill. In Georgia, it's a smaller $2,000, but layered with additional exemptions, it accumulates. And here's one most folks in the Midwest aren't aware of. In Ohio, the homestead exemption can shave roughly $26,000 off your home's market value for purposes of the tax computation. And in Arizona, particular counties permit a comparable reduction tied to income caps. Every single state handles this in its own way, but every single state, this is genuine cash. And here's where it snags people. In certain states, it's applied automatically the second you purchase the house. In most states, it absolutely isn't. You have to submit a one-page document with the county appraisal office, almost invariably ahead of a deadline that falls somewhere in the spring, frequently April 30th. Skip it and you cover the whole bill that year with no exceptions. Submit it once properly, and in many states, it remains tied to that property for as long as you hold it. One sheet of paper submitted one time can translate into hundreds, occasionally thousands, of dollars trimmed from your bill year after year for the rest of your life in that home. Now, here's who this benefits, and the answer is everybody, just in distinct ways. If you're a lower income homeowner, that $50,000 exemption in Florida or that $100,000 exemption in Texas can carve a third or more directly off your bill. And if you're a comfortable retiree perched on a home that's nearly doubled in worth across the past several years, the homestead exemption is also your gateway, because in most states the county won't permit you to apply for the senior exemption, the freeze, the deferral, or the circuit breaker until your homestead is already submitted. So if you take precisely one step after watching this video, make it this. Phone your county appraisal office tomorrow morning and inquire, word for word, is the homestead exemption presently submitted for my property under my name? If the response is no, your immediate follow-up question is which document adds it and what the deadline is. That was the warm-up. Document number 2 stacks right on top of it, the senior or age 65 exemption. Most states that provide a homestead also provide a second separate exemption that activates the year you reach 65. And this is the one the county will practically never proactively ship to you. It's a separate application. You have to request it by name. In Texas, every homeowner 65 or above gains an additional $10,000 off the school portion piled directly on top of the $100,000 homestead. In Florida, the senior exemption can tack on another full $50,000, essentially doubling your overall exemption. In New York, eligible seniors can witness up to half of their assessed value erased from the books. And here's one that slips under the radar. In South Carolina, homeowners 65 and above can exempt the first $50,000 of their home's fair market value from all property taxes, not merely the school portion, which is a substantially larger win than what most states provide at this point. And now, here's the part where comfortable retirees tune out, and where you genuinely shouldn't. Several states tie an income cap to the senior exemption. New York sits near $58,000, Illinois near $65,000. If your income exceeds that line, you presume you're ineligible, so you never even reach for the phone. But over half the states that provide a senior exemption carry no income test at all. Texas, Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama, South Carolina, age-driven, full stop. You reach 65, you submit the document, you receive it. Your bank balance, your home's worth, none of it counts toward the eligibility. So, if you're 65 or above, and you hold the home you reside in anywhere in this country, your task this week is to phone and inquire, what is the senior exemption application labeled in this county? What's needed to qualify? And when is it due? Now, we arrive at the one that genuinely shifts the needle in a serious way. Document number 3 is the senior assessment freeze, and without overstatement, it's the single most valuable document on this entire roster. Here's precisely what it does. The year you reach 65 and you submit the freeze application, the county locks in your home's assessed value at whatever figure it stood at that year. From that point onward, regardless of how much your neighborhood gentrifies, regardless of how much your home appreciates, regardless of how steeply values climb across your zip code over the following 20 years, your property tax bill continues being computed against that frozen figure. Your home's market value can soar, your tax bill won't budge. Let me make this as concrete as possible with 3 different states, because the mechanics truly vary, and you need to grasp which version applies where you reside. In Texas, once you submit the over 65 tax ceiling application, your school district property tax is frozen at the actual dollar sum of the bill, not even the assessed value, the bill itself, the year you reach 65. Your home can triple in worth. That figure cannot rise. In Illinois, the senior assessment freeze locks in your equalized assessed value, provided your household income remains under a state-defined cap, which currently sits around the mid-65,000 range. And in New Jersey, the senior freeze actually pushes one step further. It refunds you in cash every dollar your property tax has climbed beyond the year you initially qualified, provided you remain current and recertify each year. Now, here's where this turns truly painful for the very group that presumes this video isn't meant for them, the comfortable paid-off house, we're doing fine retiree, because the freeze delivers the most value in precisely the type of neighborhood that group inhabits. Picture this. Your home was valued at $240,000 the year you reached 65. It's valued at $480,000 today. If you never submitted the freeze, you're being taxed on the full $480,000 year after year for the rest of your life. Your neighbor across the street, identical model home, identical year built, identical lot size, submitted one document and is still being taxed as though their home were valued at $240,000. At a standard combined rate, that disparity alone can total $2,500 to $4,000 yearly. Now, layer the homestead exemption and the senior exemption on top of that frozen base, and you can wind up with a bill that runs 40 to 60% beneath the house 2 doors away, permanently, for the rest of your life in that home. One document, that's the entire gap between those 2 households. There's one rule on the freeze you absolutely can't afford to overlook. In most states, you have to submit it within a specific window, generally between January 1st and the close of April the year you reach 65, or in certain states, the year immediately after. Miss that window, and in several states, you forfeit the freeze permanently. It doesn't cycle back around. That's exactly why I'm the loudest about this particular document. And here's the good news for anybody who's already beyond 65 and just realizing they never submitted. In many states, you can still apply right now. The freeze applies going forward, not backward, meaning every extra year you delay is simply another year of overpayment that nobody will ever return to you. Phone the county today. Request the senior tax ceiling or senior assessment freeze application by its precise name. Document number 4 is one almost nobody outside a tax office has ever heard the name of, the circuit breaker, and it's targeted squarely at homeowners surviving on a modest or fixed income, which if you're retired and surviving primarily on Social Security and a modest pension, very likely covers you. The label originates from the concept in home electrical systems. When the load surpasses a certain threshold, a breaker trips to safeguard you. Here, when your property tax bill surpasses a certain percentage of your household income, generally somewhere between 3 and 6%, depending on the state essentially trips the breaker and reimburses you the gap. Here's the part that clarifies why almost nobody knows this exists. It's a state document, not a county document, and it's typically submitted as a credit attached to your state income tax return, even in years when you owe no state income tax at all. You report your household income. You report what you actually shelled out in property tax that year, and if the math surpasses that threshold, the state either issues you a check or applies a credit for the gap. Massachusetts, Maine, Vermont, New York, Michigan, Minnesota, Missouri, Maryland, Wisconsin, and Illinois all operate versions of this for seniors, with payouts spanning from a couple $100 up to well over $1,300 in a single year. And two more that rarely come up in this context: Pennsylvania's version, dubbed the Property Tax/Rent Rebate Program, can pay eligible seniors up to roughly $1,000 yearly, and it even encompasses renters, which loops directly back to what I mentioned at the very start of this video about how property tax flows downhill into your rent. Connecticut operates a similar circuit breaker style credit specifically for homeowners 65 and above, and the income thresholds are higher than most folks presume. Maryland hovers close to $60,000. Pennsylvania's caps out well beyond $45,000 for the higher rebate tier. This isn't a poverty program. This is a working and retired middle-income program that the vast majority of folks who qualify for it have simply never heard the name of. If your state shows up anywhere on that roster and your household income falls anywhere in that range, search Circuit Breaker Property Tax Credit plus your state's name and submit that one-page document. Document number 5 is the one almost nobody discusses because honestly, every state and county that provides it treats it like a closely guarded secret. The property tax deferral. If you're past a certain age, generally 62 or 65 depending on the state, and you've resided in the home long enough to satisfy a residency requirement, you can submit paperwork to halt paying property tax altogether. Not reduce it, halt it, full stop. The state pays the bill on your behalf, and the deferred sum becomes a lien against the home repaid only once you sell, refinance, or pass the property to your heirs. For a homeowner who is house rich and cash poor, which describes a huge swath of seniors throughout this country who purchased decades back and watched their home's worth soar past anything they envisioned, this single document can be life-changing. You get to remain in the home you raised your family in for the rest of your life without ever cutting the county another check. Oregon, California, Washington, Colorado, Texas, Tennessee, Idaho, Illinois, and Massachusetts all operate some version of it. And Georgia and Utah have begun rolling out newer deferral programs over recent years that are worth looking into, even if you haven't seen them referenced elsewhere. The interest the state assesses on the deferred balance is generally low, frequently in the 2 to 6% range, simple interest, and the resulting lien sits behind your existing mortgage in priority. One rule you have to know cold: if you're still carrying a mortgage, verify with your lender first, because some loan agreements treat unpaid property tax as a default trigger. For a home that's paid off, the deferral is clean, simple, and renews each year with one brief document. If any portion of your story touches the military, or you're married, or you simply hold a home and have never once challenged the figure on your tax bill, the upcoming few minutes might be worth more than everything else in this video put together. The disabled veteran exemption exists in nearly every state, and depending on your service-connected disability rating, it can wipe out your property tax bill completely. A 100% service-connected rating in Texas, Florida, Virginia, or Pennsylvania can translate into zero property tax for life on the home you reside in. Even a partial rating, 30, 50, 70%, very often translates into a proportional exemption that stacks directly on top of everything else on this roster, including the homestead and the freeze. It's generally a single-page document plus a copy of your VA disability letter, and in several states, including Texas and Illinois, surviving spouses of veterans who fell in action or who held a 100% rating can carry the full exemption forward. If you served or your spouse or a parent served, find out this week whether that exemption applies to you or transfers to you. Next, and this is the one that quietly inflicts the most damage of anything on this entire roster, the surviving spouse carryover. When a senior homeowner passes away, their senior exemption, their assessment freeze, and in many states, their disabled veteran exemption don't automatically transfer to the surviving spouse. They have to be resubmitted, generally within a defined window, often 1 year from the date of death, and the surviving spouse generally has to be at least 55, occasionally younger if there are dependent children still in the home. If that window is overlooked, the property tax bill can leap by thousands of dollars in a single year, dropping on the very household that just lost half its income. The county won't phone to alert you. They'll merely recompute the bill at full value and mail it. If you've recently lost a spouse or you're assisting a parent who has, this is the very first call you make ahead of almost anything else. And the third move has nothing whatsoever to do with the county granting you anything. It's you correcting them. Every single property tax bill is constructed on top of the county's appraised value of your home, and that value is established by an assessor who, in the vast majority of instances, has never stepped inside your house. They operate off neighborhood averages, square footage formulas, and broad assumptions, and they botch it constantly, occasionally by tens of thousands of dollars in either direction. Every county nationwide operates a formal right to protest process, almost invariably within a 30 to 60-day window after your annual appraisal notice shows up. You submit a brief written protest. You bring 3 comparable home sales from your immediate neighborhood that closed for under your appraised value, and you sit before a review board for roughly 15 minutes. Something close to half of all protests that actually get submitted result in a genuine reduction, and yet in most counties, fewer than 5% of homeowners ever submit one. It runs nothing. It demands no attorney. Do it year after year, and especially, without fail, the year you reach 65, because that's the year your other exemptions activate, and a lower starting value compounds every benefit on top of it. Now, here's something I genuinely have not seen mapped out anywhere else covering this subject, an actual schedule. Because knowing that a document exists and knowing precisely when to walk in and submit it are two entirely separate problems. And the deadlines are precisely why so many folks who've even heard of these programs still skip them. January through March. This is the window when most counties ship your annual appraisal notice. The day it lands in your mailbox, scribble the protest deadline straight onto your calendar. It's almost invariably 30 to 60 days from that postmark, and counties don't stretch it for any reason, including didn't open my mail. The month bracketing your 65th birthday. And this varies by state, so verify the exact rule where you reside. This is your window to submit the senior exemption and the assessment freeze, ideally during the same visit, because the freeze in particular very often carries a strict one-time filing window that doesn't reopen. Spring, generally before the close of April. This is when most homestead exemption deadlines drop. If you purchased your home over the past year and you haven't submitted this one yet, this is the moment. And remember, this single document is the gateway that unlocks every other one on this roster. Whenever your state income tax return is due, that's when the circuit breaker credit generally rides along as an attached schedule, even in years you owe no state tax. Don't permit a tax preparer to skip past that page merely because the box is flagged optional. For many of you, that page is worth more than the remainder of the return combined, and the one with no fixed calendar date whatsoever because it can occur anytime. The moment a spouse passes away, the surviving spouse carryover application ought to be the very next piece of paperwork submitted, ideally within that first year, before the county gets a chance to recompute the bill at full value. Print this section out, stick it somewhere you'll genuinely notice it, the refrigerator, beside the thermostat, wherever you glance every single day, because the single largest reason folks skip these documents isn't disbelief after viewing a video like this one. It's that 6 months later, the date has simply slipped their mind. And here's the other piece nobody else walks you through. What happens if you do everything correctly, submit one of these documents, and the county still rejects it? First thing to grasp, a rejection isn't a final verdict. It's an opening position. Counties reject first-time applications at a surprisingly steep rate, and the vast majority of the time it isn't because you don't qualify. It's because a box was completed slightly differently than the clerk anticipated, a deadline got interpreted by a different calendar than the county follows, or one supporting document was absent from the packet.